Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the Managing Director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. As the title of this video suggests, we're discussing the only true wisdom, and the end of that quote comes, to end that quote, the only true wisdom is knowing that you know nothing. And that comes from Socrates, and I must admit that I first learned this quote and it has stuck with me most of my life because it comes from the film Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, which I saw some time ago, unfortunately longer ago than I'd like to admit. But the quote stuck with me, and I was thinking about it because I tend to get folks, and I want to be clear, I'm not talking about there's anything wrong with doing things oneself. That's fine. That doesn't really bother me actually at all. The reason is oftentimes I will get folks that will contact me after attempting or getting embroiled in a case that really greatly, it could have been done a different way, but it's messed up. Long story short, the situation or the case has become, quite a conundrum. It's basically become a Gordian knot, and trying to sort of extricate oneself out of it or rectify the situation becomes quite difficult. And I often find that folks who get involved in that situation, they often are either kind of abrasive because they're upset about it. I get that side of it, but there's another side of it that where they're trying to sort of apply their paradigm or a level of logic associated with it. Oftentimes I see this in a Thai immigration context, but I see it in American immigration context too, where they'll say, well, that doesn't make any sense, or why is it done this way? That's not a good way to do that. It's not efficient. Well, I hearken back to this. The only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing. You just presume you don't know anything, and that's just the way that they do it. And I know that I don't wish that to sound condescending. In more ways than one, I'm oftentimes being more condescending or I'm trying to be condescending toward the system. The system is illogical sometimes. We see this a lot in Thai immigration. Oftentimes, I'll ultimately come to the point where I figure out what the policy, oftentimes when we're talking to an immigration officer, for example, and I'll find out what the policy behind an actual rule or regulation is, and I'll say, okay, well, I understand what they're doing, but in practice, it just results in a really bad situation. It just results in something that's just very paradoxical in the way that it plays out. We see this as well in a U.S. immigration context. I oftentimes, people ask me, well, why does the NVC do things this way? Or why are cases, processed this way? Or why is it, for example, right now, why can't we get a receipt notice out in less than 2 months from USCIS? Well, it just works the way that it works. I'm not saying it's good. And again, I always just kind of drop back to the old Socrates, and I just presume I don't know anything, and I don't try to apply my paradigm to it. I just say, look, this is how it works. It just is what it is, and we move along. And sort of going back to what I was saying, I often find that folks who've gotten sort of into the high weeds on their own, they get very frustrated, I think to some degree at themselves for even going ahead with it, or they did something they thought made sense that ultimately put their case on a worse posture. Again, all of this, it's one of the reasons sometimes you probably want to gain some professional advice because it can give you some perspective you don't otherwise really have if you've never dealt with a process, especially like immigration, on your own before. And the other thing is if you're still going to do it on your own, and there's nothing wrong with that, and you are getting frustrated, the advice that I would give you is drop back and just, as far as this process goes, you know nothing. Don't try to apply a paradigm that you would use for other things upon it. Sometimes even logic doesn't really apply. Just try to get through it as best you can, deal with the system as it is, because it's probably not going to change for you.